Pasillo and Joe Resinello.
So as Joe and I always say, the left is teeing it up. Today's no exception.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Sunday night, 8 o'clock, live again, and we want to thank you all for joining us. We noticed before we went on, we got somebody watching from Ireland, all right? So we've just gone international now. So we got a few things that we want to talk about tonight. We are going to hammer home tonight on one topic in particular, which is Pope Benedict XVI. Warning about the coming totalitarianism. Please keep in mind, before we get into that conversation, we're going to talk about a number of different things tonight. Please keep in mind that Benedict XVI was born in 1930. He has seen it all. He runs, he has seen World War II and the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc and, and obviously the church fighting against communism. He's seen it all. So there's nothing that really is going to shock Benedict about what's going on. And this warning, I think we should take very, very seriously. And by the way, if anybody thinks, I'm going to tell you two things that people need to get out of their heads because they're false statements. Number one, we did not defeat communism. Communism is still alive and well. We defeated the Soviet Union in the Cold War. We brought down the Soviet bloc. Communism is alive and well. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we do not live in the 21st century, even though technically we do. We are still living in the 20th century. The battles that we're fighting now, okay, are still the battles. Oops, sorry guys, are still the battles that we were fighting in the 20th century. Okay, so people need to get these things out of their head, and we're seeing all of that come to its fulfillment. It's horrid fulfillment right now, particularly when it comes to the left and the oligarchs in particular. Okay, so we're going to really hash this out tonight. And we want to thank you all for joining us. Remember, if you're watching on Facebook, follow us, like us, share this video with your friends, please, and also on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and share. All right, particularly subscribe and hit the little bell. That helps us to grow our audience. We only started trying to promote our YouTube page only like within the last couple months. We're already up to 400 subscribers, and thanks to you, we've now surpassed 3,000 subscribers on Facebook. Okay, so big shout out to all of you. We love you all. Let's buckle up and let's get ready to go.
So as Joe said, we have to talk about what Benedict the 16th warned the world regarding totalitarianism. But before we get into that, I think it behooves us to just give an election rundown, where we stand, what's been going on, what has been significant this week.
And I think this is, I'm sorry, Joe, this is important because if you're watching mainstream media, you would think this election is over and Giuliani and Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell are just spinning their wheels. They are not just spinning their wheels. They are very serious, and they know that they have a strategy that can very well win. So I want to say that because I tend to get discouraged myself sometimes. That's why I stay away from mainstream media, which includes Fox News now. Okay? They used to be alternative media. They are no longer alternative media. So let's get that straight. But go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No worries. With regard to this week, what I believe was significant and what we should be paying attention to is what happened in Michigan. I want to break down the timeline. On Tuesday, the canvassers in Wayne County. Wayne County is the county where Detroit is at. And I want to break down the significance of the ballots there. There are 863,000 ballots at stake. If that county was to flip, Trump would be ahead by 177,000 ballots. Now, the canvassers of Wayne County on Tuesday had to certify, meaning that they're going to give their blessing to that vote count. And it was deadlocked 2-2. And then in the dead of night, they were pressured. They were called racist. They were harassed. Their family was threatened.
These people should have been arrested for what they said about these two canvassers. But go ahead.
So what happened was this. They said they kind of caved a little bit, but I don't fault them because, to be honest with you, people are human and, people are getting threatened.
Well, when you have a family.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm just stating, facts,
But
though.
shame on those people for doxing them. See, we talked about on this show a million times. They were doxed. They were arrested. He compared them to Bull Connor and George Wallace. All because they're refusing to certify an election in Wayne County that was obviously corrupt. Go ahead, Joe.
So basically what happens is they put a caveat. They said, we'll sign, i.e. certify, if a full audit is performed. So they did, and it moved forward. But then Wednesday, the state of Michigan said, well, we're not legally bound to do the audit. So what they said is, we rescind our certification. So that's where we stand right here. Why is that significant? Because the presidential election is not, a lot of people think it's one election. It's actually 50 elections. Each state has an individual election, and then they certify, i.e. they give their electoral votes to a candidate, which has not happened yet. And this leads me to the significance of Michigan. I believe because Trump's legal team withdrew their lawsuits in Michigan, I believe they think because of what happened in Wayne County that they will not certify the electoral votes for Joe Biden.
Technically, the way I heard it was they withdrew the legal team because the relief that they were looking for, they got. Very important, this is what Joe's saying. The relief they wanted, they got in Michigan. That's why they withdrew their legal team. Okay? So go ahead, Joe.
No, so basically that's the gist of Michigan. Now, what does that mean? That's 16 electoral votes. Why does that matter? It matters because of this. This is what I believe, and this is not a new strategy. This was suggested to Hillary Clinton. You could look it up. I posted it on our Facebook page, an article from 2016 where legal experts recommended to Hillary Clinton to challenge 3 swing states, which would bring, in 2016, Donald Trump's electoral votes below 270. That is the strategy I believe Trump's legal team is going for. Why are they doing that? Because of the 12th Amendment. As it stands currently, the GOP has the advantage in the House with regard to the 12th Amendment. What do I mean by that? It's not individual representation, because the Democrats have the majority currently. It's each state gets one vote, and the Republicans have a 26-24 majority. So, if 3 swing states do not certify votes for Joe Biden, he falls below 270.
Into the House.
It goes to the House. And as per the 12th Amendment, each state will vote. And then they will decide who's the president. Checkmate Donald Trump. Now, let's talk about other potential outcomes.
Real quick, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. I know there's a number of people in the chat room who are looking forward to our conversation about Pope Benedict XVI. We are going to bring it to you. We simply were doing a recap and bring everybody up to speed on what's going into the election. Then we're going to go into that. Please stick with us. These are all important topics, but we specifically want to hammer down on Pope Benedict XVI. We'll get into it in a couple of minutes, but these are important things to let people know, because there's a lot of people in the chat room talking about alternatives to Fox News and everything. I, for one, downloaded Newsmax, One America News, Bill O'Reilly's station. I recently, I think, told you before the show, I downloaded Voice of America, which you could get on Roku or Fire Stick, all conservative, real conservative alternative media. Okay, so that's to just address a couple things in the chat room. Stay away from Fox News, but we just want to make a few more points about the election, and then we'll get into Pope Benedict XVI.
So as I said, there's 50 individual elections. We ran down Michigan. What are things to look for in the upcoming week? And then we're going to get to Benedict's warning regarding totalitarianism. Pennsylvania. As per Alan Dershowitz, they have very strong arguments in Pennsylvania if it goes to the Supreme Court. And if I was to bet money, it is. What are the arguments? The first, the courts in Pennsylvania, as in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, changed what the legislature passed about counting ballots at the end of Election Day. That's a very strong argument to the Supreme Court, and Alito already tipped his hand with regard to how he believes that outcome will go. The second argument that Pennsylvania will basically put forth to the Supreme Court is what's called equal protection with regard to counties allowing flawed ballots to be cured, while other counties
were not allowed. So there's an equal protection argument that they're going to make also.
And that argument was successful for George W. Bush. Now, what does curing ballots mean? It means when a ballot is missing data, like a signature, the voter has an opportunity to correct it. So basically what they're saying is you allowed that to happen in some counties and you didn't allow it in others. The question that all of this remains is, if the Supreme Court favors in the side of Donald Trump, will it be enough for him to win with regard to the deficit? But because of the irregularities and the questions that such a conversation at the Supreme Court level could bring, will the electoral vote go, basically not be rewarded to Biden? Because again, it's 50 individual elections, and then we have the 12th Amendment, which is the checkmate for Donald Trump.
And net underlying all of this is that the media is trying to convince us all that Trump is acting like he's the one who's staging a coup. He's very simply operating within his constitutional limits, what the Constitution prescribes when issues like this come up, like fraudulent elections. And he's working within the confines of the Constitution. He is pursuing all legal means, and you want to know something? Flip a coin. It could go either way, but you want to know what? I'm not ready to concede to the forces of evil in the Democrat Party, nor is Joe. Foxy Fox is in the chat room. She said, what did Sidney Powell say recently about the strategy? I think that was her question. Sidney Powell said that the lawsuit coming is biblical. Sounds a little Sodom and Gomorrah to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, with the fire and brimstone that's going to be rained down on these cheaters, because that's what they are. They're cheaters. And they've been busted, by the way.
And that's also the last thing which I wanted to note is pay attention this upcoming week and the week after that, what Sidney Powell has to say with regard to evidence pertaining to the Smartmatic election software. You see, that is, as Alan Dershowitz put it, the wholesale argument. That's the game changer. We don't know yet because they haven't put forth the evidence. Let's be fair. She says that they have it. Now, she is no lightweight, by the way.
No.
She's a very serious lawyer. So we have to see. We have to wait and see. These are things to look forward to moving forward this week and the week after that. We just wanted to break it down. Again, what was significant last week was Michigan. And keep in mind that the 12th Amendment option is the nuclear option. It is in Trump's favor. I personally believe, this is my opinion, that is the strategy of Trump's legal team. They are trying to convince 3 swing states to not reward electoral ballots to Joe Biden, which brings it to the House, which brings a victory to Donald Trump. Time will tell.
All right. And at least temporarily, the forces of evil will be held back. Let's see what we all do. Let's see what we all do. If the forces of evil are held back because Trump prevails, Nancy Pelosi's influence in the House of Representatives has been severely diminished. By the way, 27 toss-up races for the House of Representatives. You know how many in those toss-ups went Republican? 27. So amongst the toss-ups, all of them went Republican, and Georgia will elect those two Republicans in Georgia. A Democrat senator, they haven't had a Democrat senator in God knows how long. So let's see what we do if we're granted a reprieve. If God gives us a little break from the forces of evil that are out there, and we know they're out there. We're about to talk about Pope Benedict XVI, okay? Let's see what we do. Let's see if we act, or we say, oh, well, everything's fine now, the economy's going to be good, and we'll get more judges. Okay, that's all fine, good, and wonderful. But what are you, like Sean Connery said in the movie The Untouchables, when he looked at Kevin Costner and he said, what are you prepared to do? I know what Joe and I are prepared to do. What are you prepared to do? That's going to be the question if Trump prevails. So you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we are absolutely ecstatic. We have nearly 600 people watching right now across all social media. Those are very good numbers. We have people in the chat room that are coming to us right now from Australia, from Ireland, from England, of course, the United States, of course, our brothers and sisters up in Canada. So we want to thank you very much. You can't see it on your end, but your support and your generosity paid for a whole slew of equipment that finally, after a couple months, Joe and I got working, and everything works fine now. I think our sound is good, our picture's good, no more interruptions, and it's because of you. It's because of you who tune in to watch us because you think a couple of jamokes from New Jersey have something to say, and we want to thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, we want to thank you for your support. Now, let's get into Pope Benedict XVI.
Pope Benedict XVI warns of a new totalitarianism. This is what he had to say, and I think we'll have a very good conversation as a result of it. He said, the true threat of the church, and thus for the Petrine service, comes from the universal dictatorship of apparently humanistic ideologies. Anyone who contradicts this dictatorship is excluded from the basic consensus of society. 100 years ago, anyone would have thought it absurd to speak of homosexual matrimony. Today, those who oppose it are socially excommunicated. The same holds true for abortion and the production of human beings in the laboratory. Modern society intends to formulate an anti-Christian creed. Whoever contests it is punished with social excommunication. Being afraid of the spiritual power of the Antichrist is all too natural, and what is truly needed is that of the prayers of entire dioceses and of the world to come to the rescue and to resist it. How true that is. And that new totalitarianism. Joe and I recently interviewed E. Michael Jones on our show on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, out of Louisiana. And he talked a lot about this. Basically what he said is this new totalitarianism presents to the world a liberation, a freedom to humanity, when in fact it's putting humanity in bondage and slavery.
Because you have a world, again, Joe referenced E. Michael Jones, you have a world that allows, or people in the world that allow their passions to control their reason. And so it's always, their passions are for sex, sexual liberation, drugs. Joe and I always call it the sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture. That's what they feed you as authentic freedom. Now, we as Catholics and Christians know that that is not freedom. Because as St. Augustine said, the rich man, though a king, is truly a slave because he has as many masters as he has vices. You see, so when you allow your passions to control your reason, this is the mess you end up with. You end up with a culture that really is a swamp. The swamp is not just in Washington. The culture is a swamp, but it's brought to you by the totalitarians that Benedict XVI is talking about. It is a dictatorship. You think about the world they want, which they won't admit, but this is what they want. And by the way, this is not conspiracy theory anymore. 15 years ago, when Glenn Beck and others were talking about it, okay, in private conversation, way before Frontline with Joe and Joe, I used to talk about it. You mentioned New World Order. They look at you like you're crazy. Benedict XVI is saying it right there. The new totalitarianism attempts to mirror an authentic Christian society, only in a diabolical way, okay? So it's all about inclusion, intolerance. In the meantime, it's all about sexual liberation, perversion, giving you as many drugs as you want to stupefy yourself, to give you the illusion that you're happy and satisfied in this life, convincing you that there is no God, so there are no consequences to your actions, that when you go into the grave, you're dead and you no longer exist. So just do what you want, like Nike says. Just do it. And they're going to convince you that they're on your side, that you're truly free. But we all know, and we need to shout this from the rooftops to everybody who will listen, okay? Benedict XVI is absolutely right. You have now become a slave. And get it straight. Totalitarians want you to be their slave.
As a follow-up conversation to the Benedict one, we're going to talk about what Alito had to say with regard to corroding religious liberty. And he's kind of echoing the same, he's Catholic, he's echoing the same things Benedict is saying with regard to people's ideas, i.e. their conversation about traditional marriage. You see, and this is what Alito kind of expands upon Benedict's idea. Benedict says you're socially excommunicated. Years ago, as he said, you could say, listen, I believe in marriage between a man and a woman. And that was perfectly legitimate.
Because Obama said that, Hillary said that, a whole bunch of other people on the left said that, until Joe Biden, of course, flipped that. But go ahead.
But you cannot now, in polite company, in corporate America, in your job, even if it's not a corporate job, say that marriage is solely between a man and a woman. There are consequences to that right now. What's wrong has become right, and what's right has become wrong. He uses the term social excommunication. What that could mean is you may not be able to get a job. What that can mean is you could be fired. This is real. It's absolutely real. What Benedict is saying is correct, and also, again, Justice Alito is saying the same thing, and he echoed that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, in his dissent for Obergefell, when that was passed in the Supreme Court in the United States.
Let's make an historical point about why we know Pope Benedict XVI is correct, okay? Let's go back. Remember, if we don't talk about history, if people don't bother to read history, then they won't know what's going on right now. That's not the case with you guys. It's not the case with us. Okay? We know history. Look at what happened during the French Revolution, which really, at the end of the day, is the source of all our problems. It's not the Communist Revolution of 1917. The anti-clerical, anti-traditional, anti-Western revolution that was called the French Revolution, that's the source of all our problems. Okay? But remember what happened to those who wouldn't go along with the revolution. Yes, I'm talking about Roman Catholics in the Vendée. 250,000 Roman... Well, let me say this first. They at first resisted the revolutionaries who were going into that part of France, okay, to try to sway everybody to the revolution. They were resisted. They were pushed back. Then the people in the Vendée, fell back a little bit. Then the forces of the revolution came in and they slaughtered 250,000 Catholics in the Vendée. Okay? So it starts out persuasion, social isolation. Come on, you got to get on board or else you're not going to get a job. Don't you want to feed your kids? Don't you need to do that? Don't you want to eat? Okay? Come on, get on board. And when you resist, because we're Catholics and we're never going to bend our knee to their false religion, okay, then they're going to get violent. Now, we haven't seen it quite yet. We've seen some violence from Antifa and Black Lives Matter, okay? But we haven't seen the full, we haven't seen the pedal to the metal, so to speak, when it comes to the violence that these people are willing to inflict on us, okay? But that's why Benedict is talking about this, because it's coming. If we don't do anything about it, it's going to come, and you're not going to sit on the fence. Joe and I say on this show all the time, sitting on the fence is a choice. All right, and when the time comes and these people get power, if we allow them to take power, if you're sitting on that fence, you go too, buddy. It won't just be Joe and I in the guillotine. You go too. So don't think you could sit on the fence with these people either.
And also Benedict used the term, and I want to stress this term. This is the last point I would like to make. The Antichrist. The Antichrist is real. That is real. And what he says is the Antichrist boasts of bringing people peace and tolerance. You see, the devil doesn't come to the world with red horns and a tail. This is what's going on right now. Again, what's wrong has become right, and what's right has become wrong. A good book. We have a lot of Canadian viewers here tonight. We have a lot of Canadian viewers here every Sunday night. Jonathan Ross, our producer, is from Canada, and he brings with him many, many listeners to our show.
900 of which are watching right now. God bless you.
Read this book by Michael O'Brien, Father Elijah. It's a fictional book about the Antichrist. And to be honest with you, I read that book, and it echoes so much of what's going on right now. I'll say it again. The Antichrist boasts of bringing people peace and tolerance, when in fact he brings with him pagan practices. What are a few of them? Abortion, same-sex marriage, all things that lead people away from God.
Now, I'm not calling Biden the Antichrist, okay? But when Biden gets up there and talks about, we're not red states, we're not blue states, let's do some push-ups. No, he doesn't say that. We're not red states and blue states, we're the United States. That's the same as talking about peace and inclusion. Why can't we just have peace, Joe Rossinello? We could all have peace. What did he just say? Somebody in the chat room said, what's Benedict's warning? This is Benedict's warning. How does the Antichrist come? Peace, inclusion. Why can't we? We did a segment last week about unity. The forces of evil represented by the Democrat Party. Okay, they will present. Their argument is one of unity. Why can't we all be unified? Well, and then what else did Pope Benedict warn about, and that Joe's alluding to also? They bring their pagan practices, abortion and gay marriage. So they're going to talk about unity, Joe. They're going to talk about unity, but don't you agree that a woman has a right to choose? Don't you agree that people should just be allowed to love one another? So then when you say no, guess what? You're not being a unifying force. Off with you. It's not an exaggeration. That's what the French did during the French Revolution. Somebody mentioned the Freemasons. That's all involved with it too, so I'm not excluding Freemasonry. But that's what they did. When you disagree with the revolution, they take you to the town square and they chop off your head. That's what they did to thousands of Catholic clergy and religious during the revolution. Thousands, okay, that didn't go along with the revolution. They got the chop. So it's always mercy, or not mercy, but peace and inclusion. It's Joe. Don't forget about tolerance. Got to be tolerant. It's all about tolerance, okay? And then we could all come together. But then you better not disagree with us. You better not disagree with us.
And so many people are reminding us that the feast day of Our Lady Guadalupe is the 12th of December. Very, very, very important message that she gave to Juan Diego. She basically said, and I'm summarizing it, remember, I am your mother. Have no anxiety. What do you have to fear? Remember that message of Our Lady of Guadalupe to Juan Diego, a poor man. It's the message that we must remember. We are on the side of victory because Christ resurrected from the dead. We must stay the course. We must persevere in prayer, and we will ultimately be victorious. Never forget it.
Let Nancy know. What's entitled that book again?
Oh, it's Father Elijah.
Father Elijah.
By Michael O'Brien.
And Eileen's in the chat room says, your platform's call to action, just watching the news. No. There's nothing we could do, Eileen, about the election. Okay? We voted. Now, we're in New Jersey. Our vote means nothing. But we voted. But we do need to speak out, okay, as we're doing, as many people are doing, to get the truth out there about what's going on. Our call to action is, what do we do whether or not Trump stays in office? Eileen, that's the real call to action. In other words, yes, speaking the truth. Okay, now I'm not saying that we're not supposed to get out in the street. Okay, who did we have on? We're talking about Eucharistic procession. Oh, we have an interview that's available on our Father Justin Sinante, who did a Eucharistic procession during COVID on the back of a pickup truck. Now that's taken to the streets. Okay, and there's much more that we could do. But right now, Eileen, get it straight. The Revolutionary Act, risking that social isolation that they're looking to inflict on you, is to speak the truth. Is to just get out there and say the things that we're saying, which you know are true, we know are true. So there's a lot of calls to action. Okay, but right now it's not just watching the news. There's not much we could do about it. But the idea is, what do we do no matter who is occupying the Oval Office as of January 21st? The burden is not on Donald Trump nor Joe Biden, even though He's not going to do anything in our favor. Okay, it's on us. It's on us. So there's going to be a lot that we're going to do. All right, but right now, the main thing is to let everybody know what's going on.
And the next segment is very important, so please stay with us because it's a follow-up to what Benedict has to say, and it comes from Justice Alito, who is a good justice. He is a Catholic justice, and he had some very, very, very dire words with regard to religious freedom, religious liberty, which we're supposed to have in the United States of America, how it's corroding. I want to read you a few of his words, and I think it'll spark a very interesting conversation, and it will echo the message of Benedict XVI.
And real quick, Joe, I'm sorry. Sam Alito, Justice Sam Alito, is the unsung hero of the Supreme Court. Him and Clarence Thomas, two faithful Roman Catholics. Faithful is the key word there. Two guys who are not looking to protect the institution. They're trying to do their correct job as judges. So when Samuel Alito opens his mouth, I think people, especially conservatives, need to listen more. Don't worry about Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. They're too new to know what's going on. Alito's been with us for about, I think, 12, 14 years, okay? We need to listen to this guy because he's spot on.
And also in the chat room, the Bushwell Life has said the weapon is the rosary. How true that is. The weapon is the rosary. We must pray it every day. That's what Our Lady of Fatima said. And I'm going to listen to my mother. Let's talk about Sam Alito. This is what he had to say. He said, the pandemic has obviously taken a heavy human toll. But what has it meant for the rule of law? The pandemic has resulted in previously unimaginable restrictions on individual liberty. It pains me to say this, but in certain quarters, religious liberty is fast becoming a disfavored right. I think it's an indisputable statement of fact. We have never before seen restrictions as severe, extensive, and prolonged as those experienced for most of 2020. Think of all the live events that would have otherwise been protected by the right of free speech. Think of worship services, churches closed on Easter Sunday, synagogues closed for Passover and Yom Kippur. He called the COVID crisis a sort of constitutional stress test, adding that in doing so, it has highlighted disturbing trends that were already present before the virus struck. How true that is. COVID is the excuse. And I got news for you. If Joe Biden takes office, they're going to roll it back. The restrictions on our churches. It's going to happen again.
And listen, this isn't us making it up. He could stand there and say, I'm a nice guy. I want to bring people together. Start with the Little Sisters of the Poor. Start with leaving those people alone. Now, I'm never going to unify with Joe Biden or the Democrats, okay? They are abortion-minded. They are in favor of abortion right up to the moment of birth. Okay, Joe and I know many of you good people, hopefully all of you good people are all abortion abolitionists. Okay, we're never unifying with Joe Biden. Okay, but if he wants somebody who's at least going to be cordial with him, start by leaving the Little Sisters of the Poor alone. Start by backing off a group that has now been protected twice by the Supreme Court of the United States. But he says he's going after them. Okay. This is unifying. This is the moderate Joe Biden. So it's like, religious freedom, as Samuel Alito says, Justice Samuel Alito says, is going to be severely, severely under attack. It already is. Okay? But it's going to be even more so because they're going to feel very, very emboldened. Okay? Very emboldened, particularly if they take the Senate.
And as Joe said, we interviewed yesterday a Carmelite priest. It's on our YouTube page, so please go on our YouTube page and click the subscribe. We do a lot of great interviews. This Carmelite priest is a personal friend of ours. He's out of New Rochelle, New York, or Tarrytown, New York, at the Transfiguration Priory. And he, as Joe said, during the height of the pandemic, when New Rochelle was struck very hard by the virus, he took to the streets. And that's what priests have to do. He says this very clearly in this interview. He says a lot of things very clearly. You should listen to it. He basically went on a flatbed truck and he brought the Blessed Sacrament to the streets, throwing holy water off of the truck as well. We must become innovative. We must bring the sacraments to the people. You see, priests have to be courageous. We have to be courageous. We cannot, the church has never closed its doors. In the history of the church existed when Romans were killing Christians for 300 years.
The church survived the bubonic plague. Give me a break. It's like we're being so let down by our shepherds who just, we had Father Stephen Imbarado, the protest priest. Now his hometown right now is Santa Fe, okay? So the bishop in Santa Fe, what did he do? They weren't even ordered to shut the churches. What did the bishop do? He volunteered to close the churches. Come on, man. These are our shepherds, as Joe just said. This is a 2,000-year-old church. It is the church that was founded by Jesus Christ. Okay, it has survived everything from Roman persecutions right up through the Nazis and the communists. Okay, and the church will always survive because Christ promised us. But do these guys have to aid in the churches in this persecution? And they're supposed to be our shepherds. We don't want to bash the bishops, but come on, man, we want help. I don't want to go back into a parking lot to receive confession and Eucharist. Joe and I were blessed enough. We had a good priest who was meeting a bunch of us in the parking lot on Sundays. He would say a few prayers. He would bring consecrated hosts, and he would hear confessions. We don't want that. We want to go back to Mass. We want to go back to Mass, and we want it to stay that way. But they don't have any backbone, Joe. They don't have any backbone. They're just one letdown after the other with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, where if they stood up with one voice and proclaimed the truth as they should, stood up to the state and said, you're not shutting down churches. We know how to wear masks. We know how to socially distance. We got it. Don't worry. Take care. Kick rocks. All right? Then maybe people would listen. But the politicians know that the Catholic Church is weak in America. That's one of our problems, Joe Rossinello.
I would agree. And Alito highlighted something. Joe kind of breached that subject regarding the Little Sisters of the Poor. He basically notes specific cases demonstrating the growing hostility towards faith in the U.S. The Little Sisters of the Poor, we all know about that the government basically tried to force them to pay for contraception and abortifacients for the insurance of their employees. There's a Christian pharmacy. It was called Ralph's Pharmacy out of Washington State. The state of Washington adopted a rule requiring every pharmacy to carry forms of contraception approved by the Food and Drug Administration, including morning after pills. They refused. The state came down on them. Also, we know it's a famous case. It's the Jack Phillips Colorado bakery case, which went to the Supreme Court. He was victorious, but these are things that are at the forefront of this religious liberty fight. And Alito is basically warning us, and he goes on and he says this: a great many Americans disagree, sometimes quite strongly, with the religious beliefs of the Little Sisters of the Poor, with Ralph's Pharmacy, and with Jack Phillips. And although he said they have every right to disagree with them, he emphasized this: the question we face is whether our society will be inclusive enough to tolerate people. That's the key. Will they tolerate people with unpopular religious beliefs? And to quote a popular Nobel laureate, it's not dark yet, but it's getting there. Soon they will not tolerate it.
Right.
They will not tolerate it.
Because we were talking about the Antichrist, all right, when we were talking about the Benedict the 16th warning about the coming totalitarianism. For all of you just joining us, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We have about, Joe, I think we set a record. We're at 1,400 watching right now. God bless you all across all platforms: Canada, Australia, UK, Ireland, United States, okay? But let's make the distinction that needs to be made. When somebody tries to shame you and tell you you're not a tolerant person, we are tolerant people, okay? We're sinners. So we have to be tolerant of other sinners because we're sinners and people tolerate us. That's not what they want. They do not want tolerance. They sell it as tolerance. What they want is acceptance. So Ralph's Pharmacy and Jack Phillips and the other one, the pizzeria, and Baronel Stutzman, who are all very tolerant people, okay? Particularly Baronel Stutzman. I mean, she was friends with the same people, the same two women that are suing her, okay? They're suing her, but she was friends with them. So her tolerance is at a very high level. She does not accept their lesbian relationship, okay? And its acceptance is what they want. I say it on this show all the time. Go watch the movie Dr. Zhivago. When Zhivago's arguing with the Bolshevik, and the Bolshevik looks at him and says, adapt yourself. That's what Joe's talking about. We have to adapt ourselves, according to them. And adapting ourselves means accepting all of these things that we as Christians are not going to accept. We are not going to accept that. The Joe Bidens and Nancy Pelosi's of the world can, okay? That's their business, and they're going to have to deal with Jesus Christ, okay? And we're sinners, okay? But we are not going to bend our knee to this nonsense, okay? To this pure evil, because that is what it is. But I just wanted to make that point, Joe, that when they talk about tolerance, we need to get it straight. What they want is acceptance. You will accept what we say, or else that social isolation is coming soon to a theater near you.
There's no question about it. Someone just asked, and I'm just typing, where could you find Benedict's warning? Go to Church Militant, Michael Voris. Very, very in-depth article on it. We just highlighted some of the important segments of it, but you could read it much more in-depth on that particular site, and obviously we're here to serve, so I wanted to tell you that. Last thing I wanted to say with Alito, and I mentioned briefly with the Obergefell. Obergefell. I'm not saying it correctly. What he said, and I just want to put a finer point on the conversation. He basically said, Alito recalled what he wrote in Obergefell in The Dissent, and this is what he said. He said, I assume that those who cling to old beliefs will be able to whisper their thoughts in the recesses of their home. But if they repeat those views in public, they will risk being labeled as bigots and be treated as such by the government, employers, and schools. That, he rued, is just what is coming to pass, and he is correct.
See, what Alito is doing is he's writing something that parallels what Pope Benedict XVI is talking about. Pope Benedict XVI is talking obviously on a more general level about the coming totalitarianism. Justice Alito is getting a little bit more in the weeds. He's getting a little bit more specific about how this totalitarian regime is going to operate. Remember something, communists are smart. Nobody ever said they weren't, okay? They're evil, but they're smart. They know that they don't have to kill you. They know that all they have to do is take away your ability to earn money so that you can feed your family, to feed yourself, okay? See, we earn money not to live a sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. We earn money to provide for our wives and our children, okay? So they know that. So what do they really have to do in their mind to get you to comply? Because if they try to kill us all, then public opinion will go against them. So they're not going to do that. But what they will do is what Alito and Pope Benedict are alluding to, which is cut you off. You're cut off from society. Forget about going to cocktail parties, okay? You won't have a job. And the problem, Joe, with conservatives, all conservatives, not just religious conservatives, talk about political conservatives, is that all we ever hear from conservatives is boycotts don't work, boycotts don't work. Well, then why do they work for the left? Why is it we're all so afraid to boycott Amazon and let it be known? Or boycott Netflix and let it be known? Or boycott Hollywood and let it be known? Or boycott any advertiser that is I was talking to Joe's son had his baptism today, all right? So I was talking to his godfather, the baby's godfather, who's a mutual friend of ours, okay? And we were talking about why are we so afraid to boycott? Why are we putting money in the pockets of Amazon and all the big box stores? Why are we letting them run roughshod over us? Why are we not canceling Netflix and getting rid of it and HBO? It's all diabolical anyway. Why is it that they're so successful in boycotting? And it's all we ever hear from political conservatives is boycotts don't work. Yes, they do. Yes, they do if we were organized, even on a political level. See, we here at the front line with Joe and Joe, all you good people on Holy Faith Media and all the other platforms that are watching us, we're Catholic. We wish we could form a real Catholic reaction in this country. But as far as political conservatives taking power away from these oligarchs in corporate America, why are we not boycotting them? Why are we not telling Hollywood, no, we're not, forget about just one movie. We're not going to put any money in your pockets. None whatsoever. We're canceling HBO, we're canceling Netflix, canceling Amazon. Not going to do business with Amazon. I'll buy my meat and spend $2 more a pound, but I'll get it locally rather than buy it at a big box store. We don't do any of that. That's one of the things somebody mentioned earlier about a call to action. One of the things we could do to put evil back on its heels is start taking their money away. And you know how you do that? Spend your money wisely. You and I and all of us are stewards of the money we earn. Are we not?
And why give money to people that persecute you? That is how you move the dial. We've talked about this time and time again on this show. We've been doing this for 2 years, and we've said this time and time again. Money is their God. You want to control them? It's very simple. Take away their money. It's like what happened in the NBA. They basically went for a woke agenda. They became political activists. No one watched the NBA Finals. Guess what's not happening next year? They're not going to be social activists. Why? Because you took away their money. You see, that's the key.
See how it works? See, it's not, it's not rocket science. I don't like what the message the NBA is promoting, which is basically a Black Lives Matter. Let's call it the way it is, okay? So if you agree with the concept that Black Lives Matter, which I do, okay, because Black lives do matter, all right, that's one thing. But the way it's being put is, but I don't agree with Black Lives Matter, Inc. But when the NBA puts Black Lives Matter, and we know they mean Black Lives Matter, Inc., which Mike Church at the Crusade channel calls some lesbian Black Lives Matter, because that's really what it is, okay? The group is founded by three lesbians. 5 out of 6 members of BLM are white kids, okay? So I don't know why we don't get that straight, okay? When people, normal basketball-loving Americans, I'm not one of them. I stopped watching basketball a long time ago. But let's say I was a basketball-loving American. I see that. I say, well, I'm not going to watch. Why did it work there? Like I would ask the Sean Hannitys of the world who constantly say, boycotts don't work. Yes, they do. Just ask the NBA if boycotts work. And by the way, one thing I do love that I've given up this year, okay, and Joe has too, is even though the Jets stink, we've given up on the NFL. I haven't watched the NFL, nor has Joe. And I certainly have not watched the New York Jets. They're going to get the message too, all right? They're going to get the message too. That's what we have to do. That's one of the things we could do. It's a very important thing, I think. Don't give money to the people that are going to slap you in your face. It doesn't make any sense.
And they're laughing at you.
Oh.
They're laughing at you.
Literally all the way to the bank, Joe Resino. And laughing all the way to the bank.
And that's the truth. So don't give them your money. You'll change the cultural dial.
That's right. You want to change the culture, follow the money. Remember the movie All the President's Men?
Sure.
And Deep Throat is in the parking lot, and he said to Robert Redford, and he said, follow the money, kid. Follow the money. In America, follow the money. Why do these people have power? Because they make money. Who do they make money from? You and us. They don't have money and power if we don't give it to them. Why are we continually giving it to them? Now, again, I know it's a process. You do business with one bank, all of a sudden they put up a rainbow flag, and then you got to go find another bank. I understand it's a process, okay? But let's begin to wean ourselves off of these things. Start with the easy ones and drop the hammer. Netflix comes to mind. I dropped the hammer on Netflix, okay? Starbucks. Forget it. Howard Schultz. Give that guy our money. He's the most anti-Christian corporate goon there is, okay? Start with the easy stuff, okay? And then work on the stuff where you might be a little bit more, let's call it entrenched. You have a bank account. You got your bank accounts with one bank, and you want to search for a good bank. That might take a little bit more time. But start dropping the hammer. No woke sports, no Starbucks, no Netflix, no HBO. Those are all easy things. Very easy. You know what you do instead of watching HBO? Read the Bible. Pray. How's that? I don't need to watch reruns of The Sopranos. Neither do you.
This leads us to our next conversation. It's censorship. We talked about religious liberty. Now we're going to talk about censorship. There was an interesting hearing this week that took place between the Senate and Jack Dorsey, who is the CEO of Twitter. A lot of people may not have gotten into the weeds, but that's what Joe and I do, with regard to what was said. And what they did was they not only talked about some censorship that currently is being obviously imposed upon us when we talk about, like, quote unquote, what they view as manipulated media. They're censoring us with regard to comments that we put on Twitter and Facebook with regard to the election. But Chris Coons, who is the senator, the Democratic senator from Delaware, had some interesting things to say to Jack Dorsey.
Now, you got to catch this stuff. Again, Joe and I could talk about it, and we're going to broadcast it. Please pay attention. This whole show today should probably just be called Totalitarianism, okay? Because that's all we seem to talk about. What Joe's about to tell you that came out of the mouth of Senator Coons, and I have a statement that he said that I want to let you know about also in this conversation. It all ties into the same thing. These are the means by which they are going to control the United States. This one happens to do with free speech. So please, God bless you all. I think we're over 1,800 people watching right now. God bless you for supporting us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Help us to grow this show. But please, listen to what Joe's about to tell you.
This is what Coons had to say to Dorsey. He said, "You do, Mr. Dorsey, have policies against manipulated media, against COVID-19 misinformation, against things that violate civic integrity." By the way, that's what they decide violates civic integrity. But let me go on. The Delaware senator continued, "But you don't have a standalone climate change misinformation policy. Why not?" He goes on, "Well, Mr. Dorsey, I cannot think of a greater harm than climate change."
Please listen to this. Please listen to this.
"Which is transforming literally our planet and causing harm to the entire world. I think we've experienced significant harm as we speak. And I recognize the pandemic and misinformation about COVID-19, manipulated media, also causes harm. Now, this is the important part. But I'd urge you to reconsider that because helping to disseminate climate denialism, in my view, further facilitates and accelerates one of the greatest external threats to our world." What is he saying? Censor our speech if you believe that climate change is a hoax.
Right. And the thing is this. Let's say, for argument's sake, that climate science is real. It is not. It is a hoax. It is a communist hoax. That's what it is. That's why they keep saying things like Senator Coons is saying, okay? What he's saying is, it doesn't matter who disagrees. It doesn't matter what ideas they have. If they go against what we say climate change is, which he's calling, and they all call what, an existential threat. If I hear that one more time, I swear I'm going to punch somebody in the face. Not literally. I promise. Not literally. We're Catholic men. But it really angers you when they talk, it's an existential threat. It's an existential threat. They know they can never prove that, but they will keep saying that. So when people, reasonable people, scientists who are not on their payroll and who are not in bed with them because of funding that they need, and they argue against their version of climate change, okay? Chris Coons is saying they no longer have a right to speak freely on Twitter. That's what he's saying.
Very clearly.
Right. That means that Twitter is supposed to be, all right, and this is one of the reasons why they're having these hearings, these are supposed to be open platforms, okay? Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, they're supposed to be open platforms. There's no editorial decisions that have to be made other than if somebody is saying something like, here's how to make a bomb. Then of course they could do something about that, and any reasonable person would agree with that. But when you say climate change is a hoax on an open platform, that's not for Jack Dorsey to decide or Zuckerberg to decide. It's for the people who are listening to confront that person in the chat rooms and everything else and have arguments. That's called a free marketplace of ideas. And that free marketplace of ideas, some of which Joe and I find completely abhorrent, okay? But nonetheless, they have the right to free speech and will argue with those who we disagree with. Chris Coons doesn't want to argue. He wants Twitter to drop the hammer on people that disagree with the narrative of the Democrat Party. On all of it, by the way. Joe started out the conversation, Chris Coons talking about COVID. So it's COVID or it's climate change. This is what we're dealing with. And he wants them to stop. Or guess what? Chris Coons is going to force them to stop. Now, we'll see who wins that political battle. Did you see Senator Kennedy, by the way?
Awesome. From Louisiana.
That dude is awesome. He said, can I ask you, Mr. Dorsey? Or no, he said, Mr. Zuckerberg, why are you in the censorship business? Are you in the censorship business? He was great. Don't leave now, but when you get a chance, Google Senator Kennedy, Mark Zuckerberg, it'll come up. But that's the point. Again, the totalitarians are here. Moreover, what did Jesus say? Jesus said, he who has eyes to see, let him see. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. When you hear stuff like this, it's coming out of their mouths. If you're hearing anything different other than fascist totalitarianism, as outlined by Pope Benedict XVI, as outlined and warned about by Justice Samuel Alito, okay, then you're not hearing correctly. They're telling you they want you to shut up, and they'll use all the power that they have, both in the corporate world and in government, to shut you up. Particularly when it comes to religion. This example was climate change. Particularly when it comes to gay marriage, abortion, and the rest of it. Now it'll be transgenderism. You know that, right? Because that's all settled science too, you know. You know that, right? All you good people out there? Transgenderism and the left's version of it, that's all settled science. You could choose your sex. Science says so. Okay.
To put a finer point on the conversation, Coons' comments are a good reminder that what is COVID today is climate tomorrow. Indeed, COVID policy has offered Americans a perfect preview of what will happen if climate alarmists get their way. Science not as a method, but as a God. And not the strong, mysterious God of the Jewish and Christian faith, but a shifty one, whose every dictum and desire is whispered to the kings and enforced at their whim. That is where we're going.
Right. That is
and
where
it's
we're
sad.
going. And Mary Weeps Pray Rosary is in the chat room, but it was a comment I want to said, do you notice those who don't acknowledge God are convinced climate change must be the number one issue? Mary Weeps, we covered this last year about the whole religion, the religion of climate change. You're right. These are people who do not believe in God. See, leftist, socialist, communists, they reject God. They reject his laws. They reject the natural law. They reject the moral law. That's what they do, okay? So, when, like Nietzsche said, when you kill God, then what do? You have to become God. See, God needs to be replaced. You're going to be under some authority. So you make yourself an authority. You make yourself God, okay? That's what these climate scientists, climate change people do, and they create a religion out of climate change. So you have the earth goddess, Gaia, right? I mean, this is just the return of paganism, is really all it is. But it's worth mentioning. You have the earth goddess, okay? You have your prophets like Al Gore, right? And people like that, right? So he's like Isaiah. He's the Isaiah of the leftist environmental movement, right?
That's the leftist Old Testament.
Right, it's the leftist Old Testament. So you have, I mean, it really is a religion. Why? Because again, we'll talk about E. Michael Jones. E. Michael Jones makes the point all the time. When you water down, particularly Christianity, all right, particularly after the Protestant revolt, okay, over time you just had a watering down. You had a toothless Christianity. You had a Christianity that was emptied of all its true beauty. Okay, where truth really becomes relative. Everything becomes a matter of my own conscience. Well, if a person gets to that point, well, what's so hard about leaving that behind? Saying, well, I might as well just, I don't believe in any of that because there's nothing really to believe in. Okay, so I'll go and find another religion. And what religion do they find? They find environmentalism. They find communism. Communism is a religion. Okay, again, sacraments like abortion and gay marriage are all part of the communist ideology. Now, let's say the neo-Marxist way they're going to try to control society. They have their priests, they have their prophets, okay? So the thing is, that's what people do. They kill God, and then they replace God, or they kill God in their hearts. Obviously, you know you can't kill God. They kill God in their hearts, and then they look for God in other, as Benedict XVI said, secular ideologies.
But why do they do that? Because we all thirst for God. They're looking, they're searching, they're just looking in the wrong place. You see, we all search for God. That's the story of man, looking for God in the wrong place. But we all know what St. Augustine has said. The heart does not rest until it rests in thee. The sooner society figures that out, the better we will be. And that is why we must pray. That is why we must embrace a sacramental life. That is why we must fast. Because the only people who change the culture are saints.
Right.
And people believe what they see, not what they hear. And saints change the world. We are all called to holiness. That is how we will change the culture.
Right.
The last story we want to talk about is Christian marriage, but it's interesting. I think this is a very interesting twist, and I also think it's very noteworthy.
You mentioned about evangelizing the culture. What better way to turn our culture around than promoting families, strong marriage, Christ-centered marriages, and big families? You want to put a weed up the butt of leftists, okay? Start having lots of kids, okay? Get married, stay true to your spouse, okay? And believe me when I tell you, that's one of the best ways to evangelize the culture. And Joe wants to talk about it because there are some interesting facts going on.
I think you'll find this to be surprising, actually. Divorce has finally hit its lowest point in 50 years. Interesting. And studies show the coronavirus is giving couples a renewed appreciation for each other and for marriage. Scholars at the Institute of Family Studies are reporting that even while the U.S. divorce rate has been steadily declining over the last few decades, that decline has picked up speed recently. New data out last week shows it has finally hit its lowest point in 50 years. In the world of family studies, this is absolutely stunning. Wendy Wang, who is the director of research at the Institute of Family Studies, this is what she had to say, and I want to throw some numbers at you. For every 1,000 marriages in the last year, only 14.9 ended in divorce. This comes from a newly released American Community Survey data conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau. In 1970, just to give you some perspective, 15 out of every 1,000 marriages ended in divorce, meaning fewer couples in the United States are divorcing today than 50 years ago. Now, why is that? Maybe because COVID is bringing us together. Maybe because when we're in hardship, we rely on things outside of ourselves. Our selfishness declines. I've been involved in pre-Cana, teaching couples when they get married. Me and my wife have done this a number of times. What is the biggest marriage killer? Selfishness. What prevents us to get into heaven? Selfishness. No selfish people go to heaven. We are called to two types of martyrdom, and most of us will not experience the red martyrdom. But every other person who thinks they're going to heaven must experience white martyrdom. What is that? Dying to self. Who taught us that? Jesus Christ. He died to himself. What does he say? What is read at Mass? He emptied himself. I'm going to take you a little bit of St. Paul, throw a little St. Paul at you. He said he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave. That's how you get to heaven. You empty yourself. So why do I bring that up? During COVID, families had to come together. Belts had to be tightened. Jobs were lost. We had to support each other. We had to take care of each other. As a result, families became stronger. Mm-hmm. It's always true. Christianity spreads when it faces hardship. Well, guess what? Hardship is upon us. The walls of the state are coming in on us.
Right.
Maybe our faith will get stronger as a result.
Well, along those lines, Anna Colleen is in the chat room. She says less people are getting married. That's true, Anna Colleen. But here's the thing. It's the same thing as Pope Benedict obviously prior to this recent warning, talked about a smaller church. Was that his Regensburg address? That's a long time ago, right?
1969.
1969. Okay, so that address is as old as we are. Okay. If you have a smaller church, but it's a stronger church, okay, then that's the way it is. Okay, where it's a church that you could rely on for truth, to be true, beautiful, and good, and to represent that in the world without any, like I said, much stronger, less confusion than we're going through now. Same with marriage. If less people are getting married, but marriage as an institution, marriage as a sacrament, okay, is being strengthened, okay, then that's a good thing. Eventually, all those strong marriages will be hopefully a light to our culture, and that light will shine upon people and enlighten them that they ought to be getting married too. So I agree with you. Less people are getting married, but marriage as an institution itself is getting stronger amongst those married couples.
And the last point I want to make comes from Wendy Wang, again, the director of research at the Institute of Family Studies. This is something, I read this from her, and I just said, you know something, Wendy? I think you're watching the front line with Joe and Joe, because this is something we've said time and time again. We've been doing this show for 2 years. We've said this time and time again. She said, faith makes a significant difference. People who are frequent churchgoers are more likely to be married. And that marital commitment is much stronger and higher for people who attend church. You see, marriage is a sacrament. We cannot sustain marriage long-term without God because we are sinners and we are innately selfish. We need the grace of the sacrament. How do you live a sacramental marriage? You live your vows. What are your vows? You don't contracept. You're open to life. You rear your children in the faith. These are promises you make at the altar. You can't live a sacramental marriage if you're not open to life, if you're contracepting. That goes against the Catholic faith. These are things you make a promise when you get married in the Catholic Church. If we live a sacramental marriage, God will aid us in our marriage. We will be faithful to each other, and we will lead each other to heaven. And that is the vocation of marriage, to teach our children about God and to work together and to purify each other, to die to self through the vocation, and to go to heaven. That is what Wendy Wang is basically saying without saying it. She's saying that faith makes a significant difference. It makes a significant difference in marriage, but it also makes a significant difference in your life. That's all I have to say.
And that's a great place to end the conversation. Okay? So yeah, I mean, and it's so true because, when we look at just one other statistic that Joe and I have said on the show, and then we're going to let you guys go, is that, yes, when people say, yeah, you Catholics, the divorce rate amongst Catholics is over 50%. Right. The divorce rate amongst Catholic couples, Catholic husbands and wives that go to church every Sunday, frequent confession, and pray every day, particularly the rosary, that divorce rate is 3%.
Actually, to add to that also are open to life.
And open to life, not contracepting.
3%.
3%, okay? So when you want to look at that smaller, stronger church, okay, that we were talking about, well, those will be the families that will be represented in that smaller yet stronger church, okay? We want to thank you all. I mean, we kicked butt today. We're over 2,000 views for at least the last half hour, which is phenomenal. All you guys on Holy Faith Media, all you watching on Frontline with Joe and Joe on YouTube and Facebook, and any other platform you're watching us on. We can't thank you enough for supporting us. We ask you, please share our videos, okay? If you like them and you think the conversations are worthwhile and you want your friends and family to see them, like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell on YouTube, do all that fun stuff. And once again, just thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because we wouldn't be able to do this if we didn't see the type of support that we've been getting. We want to give a special thanks to Jonathan Ross, who is the producer of Holy Faith Media. all right, and who produces the Frontline with Joe. And we thank you so much, Jonathan, for helping us. We want to encourage all of you to take advantage of a 30-day free trial subscription on the Crusade channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. That's Mike Church's station out of New Orleans. Joe and I have a weekly show, a 3-hour show on Mondays. We do not get paid. Want to say that one more time. We do not get paid. We just think it's a great channel, just like we think Holy Faith Media is a great channel with a lot of great content for all us like-minded people to listen to and to talk about. So we encourage you to do that, crusadechannel.com. So thank you again. And remember, join us next week, Sunday night, 8 o'clock. And until then, our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation, that's going on everywhere. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening.